Dark Armed Dragon, or D.A.D for short, is such an iconic card. One which has more or less single-handedly defined multiple formats, with decks like D.A.D Return and Teledad bearing the name for the keystone card. But what makes the card so powerful, so memorable, and so well designed in my opinion? I think the best place to start when looking at D.A.D is to break down the name into a little bit more detail. The first word is dark, which references the card's attribute, as well as how this card is a dark counterpart. There are a lot of these cards introduced towards the end of the GX era, with another notable example being Dark Nifs. But the dark influence goes further than just being an evil retrain, as the summoning condition for the card is based on dark monsters in the graveyard. Having exactly 3 dark monsters in the graveyard is a hurdle, but not one which is too high to overcome in normal play. This is in contrast to, say, the 5 monsters in grave needed to bring out one of the elemental lords. Naturally, D.A.D fits best in decks which can easily modulate the number of dark monsters in the graveyard, with good examples being zombies with Plague Spreader Zombie, or Mizuki to special summon dark zombies, as well as Destiny Hero Malicious to decrease the number of dark monsters in grave. Or, on the other end of the spectrum, Armageddon Knight or Dark Grepher to help load up the graveyard. All that is pretty standard orthodoxy, but recently I had an epiphany. One of the concerns I have with modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the need to play hand traps as disruption tools just to properly play the game, with most hand traps just functioning to slow down your opponent, without really advancing your own game state. Since hand traps are becoming a necessity, tailoring your deck or side deck with this in mind can lead to virtually free graveyard setup. There are a lot of decent dark attribute hand traps which might otherwise be dead in the graveyard, like Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries, Dimension Shifter, D.D. Crow, or if you're feeling spicy, Marionette Mite, Skullmeister, or even the OG Karibo. I couldn't get that last one out with a straight face, but you get the point. These of course are pretty format dependent, but there's a lot of good options to consider, even the unorthodox ones from time to time. Plus, if your deck is getting close to that critical mass of dark monsters, you can start playing some of the other generic dark support, like Creeping Darkness, which is an underrated search card, Luna, the Dark Spirit, which is good for play extension, and who could resist the allure of darkness in the form of additional draw power? But I am already getting off topic. Let's get back to that special summon condition. Note that summoning D.A.D from hand does not exhaust a resource. You will still have all 3 dark monsters in grave after D.A.D is summoned. And since the effect is not once per turn, you can then bounce the card back to hand with cards like Gen X Ally Birdman, only to immediately resummon D.A.D. You can sorta do this with a copy of Zephyros the Elite, but that requires getting another dark monster in grave to resummon D.A.D, since Zephyros is now on board. Of course, link summoning helps with that problem quite a bit. Another consequence of this unique summoning condition is that you can also special summon a second D.A.D from hand, or potentially even a third. Then you might as well overlay into Lucky 7 straight, since RNG has already been so kind to you. I really like the uniqueness and depth of design from this summoning condition, but I think at this point we are finally ready to move past the first word of the card's name, focusing instead on the Armed Dragon portion of the name. For context, the original Armed Dragon series of level monsters were not bad for their time, but definitely not meta-defining. Like with a lot of level monsters, the first incarnation was often omitted, in this case Armed Dragon level 3, since it's not particularly necessary as you can tribute summon the level 5. Level 7 and 10 are too awkward for me, but 5 has some potential with that effect. Targeting monster removal at the cost of discarding a monster from hand, with the catch being that the target has to have less attack than the discarded monster. Although visually the influence of the original Armed Dragons is obvious, the way their destruction effect has been implemented is such a strong twist on the formula. Now the targeting destruction can hit monsters and speller traps, and now comes at the cost of banishing dark monsters from grave. Monsters in grave are not an active resource like cards in hand, so calculating their value in terms of card advantage can be tricky at times. But it's not out of the question to consider each card you pop on the opponent's side of the field to be a +1 in card advantage. This puts the ceiling of the card as a +3 when played onto a relatively full board. But we can actually extend this further with cards like Arima the Wicked Warden or Garbage Ogre, which can discard themselves to search for Lair of Darkness and Garbage Lord respectively. I'm not sure how Lair of Darkness fits into most decks, but Garbage Lord is a pretty generic combo piece, since it can special summon itself from hand at a relatively low cost. Then, if you can get D.A.D itself in grave, you don't even need to worry about having exactly 3 dark monsters. And you can use Phantom of Chaos to just keep popping cards until your graveyard's exhausted. That interaction is more geared for D.A.D Return or Teledad era decks, but it's still interesting to note. Speaking of which, D.A.D has historically been a very strong card, but I don't think it was ever broken. The card definitely spent a lot of time on the FNL list, but only as a limited card. And right now, it's a little bit crazy to think that in both the TCG and the OCG at the time of writing, the card is at 3. This puts the card in a pretty interesting place. I think the card is a little tricky to use in the modern day, since getting 3 monsters in grave is still a hurdle, and targeting destruction-based removal in particular is a lot less useful, since so many monsters either resist targeting or destruction, or both. Not to mention cards which benefit from destruction. So I think the best application for the card might still be as another combo extender, as it does have the ability to special summon itself from hand at no cost, albeit with a bit of an opportunity cost, since the card can be a brick some of the time. But if your deck is already hitting that critical mass of dark monsters, or if you are already packing playsets of some of the dark hand traps, or if you are even brave enough to play Garbage Ogre, I think D.A.D has left quite a mark on the game and still has a little potential. Speaking of dads, happy Father's Day for anyone watching on release day. But for those watching at any point in the year, it's probably still a good idea to thank your father, if possible.